welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today will be Seabass, as we will talk Vanderbilt sports. This episode presented by the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water. The Well is a coffee house with a mission to bring clean water to the world. To date, over 30 communities across the globe now have access to safe water, health, and hope. You too can make an impact by visiting a Well Coffee House. Today, there are 5 locations in the Nashville area. Those can be found in Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, Bellevue, and Cool Springs Lifeway. You can find more information at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We also thank our episode title sponsor, co-sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center, which is located in the Gulch. Our news today, presented by Sutherland & Belk, a local injury law firm committed to helping those who've been injured in accidents. If you're someone you know has been in a wreck or other error or other accident, reach out to Sutherland & Belk, see what your rights are. You can find their contact info online at sbinjurylaw.com. Give Taylor and Russell a call. Those are good dudes. Like them a lot, and they are very good at what they do as well. Well, this comes as no surprise, but Vanderbilt has announced its starting pitcher for the regional opener against Ohio State. It'll be Drake Fellows, who was the Commodores' #1 starter all year long. Vanderbilt and Ohio State play in the Nashville Regional, 6 o'clock Central Friday night at Hawkins Field. Our guest line, presented by Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on their sheets for several years now. They're amazing. I have no desire to use anything else. They're fair trade certified, which means they're made under safe conditions by men and women who are paid and treated fairly. There's a money-back guarantee. You can try them for a month and send it back. You will not want to. And once you have the sheets, try the mattress, which was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is BOLL and branch.com. Enter the phrase Vandy and get $50 off your first set. Seabass joins us now from WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us, my friend. Hope you are doing well.
Man, I'm doing fantastic, dude. I am doing absolutely fan-freaking-tastic, man. I'm still reeling over Saturday's game, man. How you like them apples? How you like them apples, Ole Miss? Down, what was it, Chris? 7-0? Down 7-0 coming. And by the way, was there any Commodore fan out there who didn't think with those bats that they weren't at least going to give it a rally? And not only did they do that, they did enough to win it. Regular season conference champs, tournament champs for the 3rd time in the Corbin era. How could life get any sweeter than that?
Well, it was actually 9-1, I think, in the 3rd. And someone texted me, and excuse me if I said this on a previous podcast, I may have, but someone texted me and said, do you think they can come back? I said, well, the question to me isn't the hitting. I think the bats can do it. It's can they hold Ole Miss down most of the rest of the game without allowing much more? And thanks to Jake Eater and Tyler Brown, they did.
It was, and to be honest with you, I started this tournament just thinking, man, let's get 2 and get out of here, but I mean, good grief, the way they were playing, they had to finish it off, man. That great. And you know what I love, Chris? Didn't they just kind of show you that they can win in any type of game during that tournament?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and I just love that. From one your run rule. Now they dominated 2 games, obviously, but run rule in one of them, and then winning a 1-0 shutout the next day when the bats aren't going, and you had 2 of the best pitchers in the conference squaring off against each other. And then to come back from 8 down at one time, it really just kind of showed that this team is ready regardless of the situation, man. And some of the question marks that we've had throughout the year are still going to be the question marks that we have going forward. But overall, man, this team, I know a lot of people aren't overly excited about the seeding or the pairings and all that. But golly, Bill, Chris, if that pen holds up, this team, 2 things. If that pen holds up and we can get Raby back to where he needs to be, I mean, there's just no reason why this team, bare minimum, doesn't get to Omaha.
Who's the team that you least want to see in the postseason? I have my answer. No, having said that, there's a few other teams I'd like to research a little bit more. Mine is biased because of where I am geographically. But is there a team that you just flat out don't want to see if you're Vanderbilt?
And maybe this is some of that series talking and the way that it went down. They may not be quite the team they were a month or so ago, but Georgia still scares me. Most of the teams you're going to hear me say are teams within the conference. Arkansas scares me. Arkansas scares me. I've seen where some people have a little fear of Texas A&M. Obviously UCLA at the end of the day. Do I think Vanderbilt's a better baseball team? I'm going to say UCLA, but the one team, I guess, that if I was probably the most nervous about, it's a team who, going into our matchup with them, was tied with us for the most wins on the season, and that's Mississippi State. Mississippi State makes me nervous. They scare me. I mean, when we faced them, we shut down Jake Mangum, but that's not going to happen all the time. And I think about that. I think about that super regional last year. And obviously we're not going to meet them in any super regional, but that's a team right there that I think can get the bats going, and they got a decent amount of pitches. I'd go with State if the one team.
Yeah, that is mine too. I think that they and Vanderbilt may be the two most balanced teams in the country. I think that statistically their lineups are pretty similar. I think Vanderbilt's is better. It's just a gut feeling. I don't know if the stats would back me up. What I don't like about having to face State if I'm Vanderbilt is, now I think Vanderbilt's bullpen may be better, but they can run small late into any game as they have shown, and that may be good enough. I know Vanderbilt won that one 1-0, but State had probably twice as many base runners, and Vanderbilt got that blue pit, and sometimes that's just the way baseball is. You have a dink that falls in, and that's what it got, and that's how it goes. But between their starters, he and Ginn, I think Vanderbilt's pen is better, but those guys, you match them up with Vanderbilt's 1 and 2, I clearly prefer State's. Now, if you can get them out of there, I think the advantage, again, tilts to Vanderbilt. But I look at Georgia. Georgia's a great pitching and defensive team. I'm not as sure about their lineup. Same thing with A&M. And A&M's lineup is a lot worse than Georgia's. So Arkansas, I haven't seen them. That's a really good team. I just don't think their pitching outside of Isaiah Campbell and their closer Cronin really scares me. Their lineup's really good. But and keep in mind, I've been seeing the best of college baseball all year. To me, I think Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, having not seen UCLA, and I would like to see them at some point, I think those are the best two teams in college baseball.
Yeah, and one of the things that makes me a little bit nervous is that, first of all, we weren't touching Ethan Small. I mean, he didn't just dominate, and we weren't anywhere near it. And one thing that makes me a little bit nervous, Chris, is that a good chunk of our lineup and some of our most productive players are our left-handed hitters, and they might as well be up there with a wooden spoon. That's what makes me nervous. A dominant left-hander who can locate is going to be it could prove to be very difficult, just like he was in that game in the tournament. I mean, if they play tomorrow, I don't anticipate much different of an outcome with a dominant lefty like him, and that's one of the main reasons that I get scared of Mississippi State.
I understand the dominant lefty argument. I don't think that's exactly it, though. I've looked at the stats. They hit lefties and righties almost the same, and you got some guys, I think Duvall is one of them, that hits lefties pretty well, and a lot of the other guys, Blade is the one guy that's got a bigger platoon split, but a lot of those guys hit lefties about as well as they do righties. I don't think the problem is elite lefties. I think the problem is elite pitchers, because I think Hancock's a right-hander and Christian Roa's a right-hander. It wasn't elite lefties. It was elite pitching that gave them problems, and maybe 10, 15% of the time, but that's everybody.
I won't argue that. But if I'm trying to find one team I don't want to play, I think about him. And again, I think that result would be the same if they were playing tomorrow.
No, I agree. I don't know that they squared him up all night that I remember very well.
No, they weren't close to him. He was absolutely dominant. I've had a chance to see him pitch for a while. He's from this area. He's from Lexington, Tennessee, just down the road. And man, he has really turned out to be something special.
What was the word there on why he backed out of his Vanderbilt commitment? Because I have never heard.
You know, I did not hear either. I've not heard one person bring that up, but I'm not sure. But
Boy,
can you imagine? I mean,
if he'd stuck with Vanderbilt, holy cow! Yes.
I mean, just imagine, in a series, if you've got to face Ethan Small, Drake Fellows, and Kamar Rocker.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine that? God, that would have been unbelievable. But I'm quite happy with where we're at right now. Though I do got to ask, I didn't get a chance to hear your last podcast. What was wrong with Patrick? Do we chalk it up as just one of those days?
I don't know. Someone had said that he was pitching at 90 rather than 88 or 89, and sometimes for whatever reason, some pitchers work better at lower velocity. I don't know what the problem was. I don't think 1 or 2 miles an hour explains why he couldn't locate anything. And that's what I really don't understand about his career. And that's kind of my beef with Scott Brown is why are these pitchers going backwards with their control and command? These juniors and seniors, I don't get that.
Yeah. It's not collectively, but there's enough of them that it makes you ask that question. If it were one of them, then okay, it's something just going on with them, but that's not the case. So yeah, it's a fair question to ask.
Well, and to be fair, I don't know if that's Scott Brown's problem or not. Sometimes things happen with people that coaching has no control over, but on the other end, it is his job to coach pitchers and make them improve. So there's that.
Yeah. So we'll see. Now, I do want to ask you something else because I know you did that podcast the other day. It sounds like you're not a fan of the pairings, and if you could paraphrase, you have to go in the whole thing as to just exactly what it is. I mean, I don't know a thing in the world about Ohio State, so I have no idea. I mean, they're a 4 seed, but. I mean, I don't know a thing in the world. Do you feel like Vanderbilt got jobbed? Do you feel like the SEC itself was getting jobbed? Where are you coming from?
Okay, I wrote about this today, and I'll just go ahead and share it here basically. When I look at regionals, here's what I look at. I look at who is your 4 because that's the only thing that you know. You don't know of the 2 or the 3 which you will get. There's a decent chance you won't see one of them at all. In fact, Vanderbilt has now played 2 regionals at home where it never saw the 3. And the 3 is, I feel like it's a cop-out that the NCAA will, quote-unquote, balance a regional by sticking you with the weaker 3. When all that does is, if you stick a weak 3 with the strong 2, all that does is increase the likelihood that you're going to face the 2. So in some ways, like a strong 2 and a weak 3 is exactly what you do not want as a host. Because you might see that team that you play the next day roll through the 3 on Friday, not have to expend pitching, which is kind of the key aside from winning and losing in tournaments is how much of that do you have to expend. So I don't really pay much attention to the 3 unless the 3 happens to be better than the 2. And if you're talking about a high 3 anyway, being better than a 2, that's still not a bad situation being as a host. What I look at is first night. And again, this is very much influenced by what happened in 2007. Because I think what happened to Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt got beat as much by Austin Peay as it did with Michigan because it used Casey Weathers. That game went, I think, 11 innings, maybe 12. He was not available the next night when they needed him, and that bullpen did not come up when it needed him to. And then let's say that you have to expend Tyler Brown to beat Ohio State on Friday night. And let's say that you're in a close game against Indiana State, which can really pitch a lot like that Michigan team could that year. Let's say you don't have Tyler Brown. And the guy you put in there doesn't have his best day. You end up losing that game. And Ohio State's ace, this kid was drafted by the Reds. His name is Seth Lonsway. He was drafted by the Reds a couple years ago. Did not pitch his senior year of high school because of an arm issue. Got drafted anyway. Did not pitch all of last year due to recovering from that arm issue. So this is his first year in college baseball. His first 4 outings were poor. Since then, his ERA has been well under 12. He strikes out about 13 guys per 9 innings, which is an elite strikeout rate. He does walk some guys. So you may catch him on a night where he's walking guys and maybe it's not a problem. That's a team that you don't want to be wild with because they will make you pay. They will take pitches, they will load the bases, and then you hang a ball and you got to double into the gap for 3 runs or a home run. But all things considered, and again, the argument has never been, and this is where this drives me crazy, the argument has never been, should Vanderbilt get through the regional? Well, of course it shouldn't. It should. But it would be like if you're the NCAA committee and you're doing this for basketball, and Virginia's your number 1 seed in the tournament, not that you could make Virginia play a 13 seed, but it's kind of like that. Instead of playing like the play-in 16-1 winner, Ohio State is one of the top 4s to begin with, and then you throw in an ace, and so that's when Ohio State is its best. So really by that point, it's not a 4. It's probably a 3 or a 2. All the other 8 national seeds got a pretty easy matchup. They didn't. I'm not saying that there was an agenda at play. I think we ought to be careful about that unless we have proof. I just think they're incompetent. I look at what they did to Stanford. Stanford got debatably the toughest 2, 3, and 4 in the field, and that's horrible. When you're deciding championships, if your body of work is supposed to mean something, why don't you take care not to do that to a team? And again, this was very avoidable. That's my point. And as for Indiana State, they're a decent 2. They could have gotten an easier 2. I don't think that's right. I think if you give them Florida A&M or an easy 4, it's like, okay, Indiana State's not the easiest 2 out there, but it's not the hardest either. It's at 4 where I think that they really jobbed Vanderbilt, and they totally jobbed Stanford. What they did to Stanford was just criminal.
Well, let me ask you this now. Do you think that, and look, I feel you, and by the way, I've agreed with pretty much everything he said, but do you think that this lineup is just, it's such a good hitting lineup that we'll be able to overcome that no matter who they're playing? I mean, the lineup is just too much, and I'm sure he's done well since, but has he seen a lineup like this? Probably not.
No,
I think this team.
I agree that may be how it turns out. But here's my point in a different way. Let's go back to basketball. Let's say that you're seeded in the NCAA tournament again today, and you got Duke. Is the way you see the tournament to say, well, Duke should be good enough to get past whoever, so we're going to give them as a 16. We're going to give them, one of like a Stephen F. Austin or somebody like that, who's not a 16, but they're like a 13. And let's say we're going to give them, we're going to put one of the tougher 8s in their region. Like a team that had some injured players or something like that, and earned an 8 for seeding, but was maybe better than that. The point is not, can Duke beat those teams? Of course it can. The point is that a fair way, considering the needs and the accomplishments of all 64 teams, to seed the field? No, it's not. And by the way, it's not fair to Ohio State either.
Okay. I guess, and that makes sense. And you're right about that. But let me ask you this, okay? And I'm not on their side at all, but I am curious as to this. What would you have done differently?
I would seed it as close to an S-curve as I can, which means a good 1 gets an easy 2, a tough 3, and an easy 4. And give a little leeway for geography. Say if you're a 2 nationally, you should get the 63, but maybe you get the 64, or maybe you get the 62 or 61. Give it maybe a 3 or 4 seed limit of how far you can go up and down the curve for geography and travel reasons. If there's not a big difference, and I'm cool with that, but I'm just not cool with this. And again, it's the NCAA is the expert in straining the gnat, to swallow the camel. Here we are. You got in other areas of the world, you got Will Wade at LSU, and you got Arizona, which are basically giving the NCAA the finger right now. Everybody knows they bought players, which is like the cardinal sin in the record book. The NCAA is so toothless it can't do anything about that. And here they are worried about walk-up music and making sure teams change dugouts between games so that the home team doesn't get to see. It's just so stupid. The whole thing with the NCAA, we could do a whole podcast on that. I won't, but it's just the absurdity of the whole thing is what drives me bananas.
I don't even remember what the question was.
I may not have even answered it.
You definitely had something you wanted to say, didn't you? That's fantastic. But I love the
NCAA. I've always thought this. If the NCAA were the highway patrol, here's how it would work. They'd set the speed limit on interstates at 40, and you'd have people zipping by in Indy cars going 150. And they don't even try to catch those guys. What they do is they sit there and they try to pick off the guy going 41 or 42. Or better yet, they say, hey, if you catch yourself going 41, if we don't have a cop around, just go ahead and pull yourself on over and turn yourself in, and we'll deal with you fairly. And it's a guy who turns himself in and goes 41 that gets punished way worse than the guy driving 150 ever does. It's absurd.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, after a couple of incidences that were supposed to be foundational, rocking, game-changing type of violations that basically ended up nothing. Remember the Yahoo report on the University of Miami?
Yeah, I know, and it doesn't matter because they can't catch anybody. They can't do anything to anybody, and so they spend their effort on this penny ante stuff. Like I'm talking about. It's stupid. I wish they'd blow the whole thing up.
Well, but it's not just that, but you had who was it, Chris? The FBI, doing a press conference. You might as well come forward now and admit it. It'd be easier on you, and this is going to change the game. Some of the names are going to just floor everybody and all this other stuff. And what we got? What do you got? Nothing. What really happened? And did you slow anything down? You might have slowed it down a little bit. You ain't changed anything. You ain't changed anything at all. And you remember, Chris, they were basically telling these coaches, you might as well come forward now. Which no way they were going to do that. But I mean, look, nothing happened. I mean, honestly, there shouldn't even be there is nothing. There is nothing left. I don't know if it's a matter of they just turned a blind eye and don't want it to, or they simply don't have the resources.
It accomplished one thing and one thing only, and it accomplished showing that the emperor has no clothes. That's it.
That's it. And, LSU fans want to win basketball games. I get that. I understand that. Man, there's no way I want Will Wade coaching my team. No way.
What do you do? What do you do if you're in a situation where you can't win without cheating? It just puts everybody in a bad spot, and that's the way it is. It's you either decide you want to be principled, and principled people are the ones that turn themselves in. People like Will Wade don't care. I don't mean to pick on Will Wade, but that example's plain as day right in front of us.
Well, and like I said, we got to ask ourselves, the fans down in Baton Rouge. The only thing that matters is if they win basketball games, yes or no. I mean, there's no morale. Look, I'm not saying it's a free-for-all, but at the end of the day, fans don't care about that other stuff.
Yeah.
They want to win basketball games, and their crutch will be everybody's doing it. So what's the difference? Even though, I mean, you've been cold caught, nothing really even happened to you. Why even consider stopping? This basically says it's on. Let's do it. Let's do this because there's nothing to stop us. And now you got, it's going crazy. You got the top players and some of the top players in the country. Now they're not even looking to go to college anymore. What's this cat? RJ Hampton or Frampton or something like that? Headed to New Zealand, play in the Australian League, and skip college altogether because he wants to get paid. Which, I get it. But you might make more money going to play for 1 year at one of these colleges.
Oh yeah, I think you would.
And that freaks me out. And I want to compete, Chris. How are we supposed to compete with that?
Like I
without
said,
doing
if
it too.
if you the problem is if you choose to be ethical, you have a slim chance. And everybody else, if you don't want to be ethical, they're not going to turn themselves in, and they're just going to stick the finger to the NCAA like LSU and Arizona are doing right now. So I don't know what to do. I tend to judge people who cheat less harshly now because how else are you gonna win? And if the people who are supposed to enforce the speed limit are inept at forcing the speed limit, you're going to get run over on the highway if you don't keep up.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Are we saying, and obviously not literally coming out saying, but are we saying, Derek, go do what you got to do? Do what you got to do.
I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. It's not that I believe it. I'm just conflicted. I am a rules guy. Like if the rules are there, I think that you should abide by them. I'm also the guy that when I'm on the interstate a lot of times, I will drive 5 miles over the speed limit because I know that I'm not going to get pulled over and it'll get me somewhere a little faster. That's probably not the right analogy. I guess what I'm saying is I think what Will Wade and those guys did was reprehensible. I think it's made worse by the fact that these kids are not getting the money, they're getting used. That's a whole different topic. But on the other hand, we see what it is. What the NCAA is basically saying is you can go cheat all you want because we have no power to do anything to you. And if you choose to abide by the rules, God help you if you slip up a little bit because we're going to have no mercy on you.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
It is.
Who's running this thing? I don't know. What about, all right, Chris, let's roll right along because I know we both got time constraints. What about some of these potential renovations?
Well, we don't know what they are yet. This is where I think they are, and this is all stemming from the letter that Malcolm Turner wrote yesterday to fans, which was very vague in a lot of ways, but I think it communicated the kinds of things they need to be communicating. I think the fundamental issue is this. I think their basketball and football facilities are so out of date that there's no quick fixes for those things. And I think that is why they keep having to buy time a little bit more, which is understandable. The thing that I did like most out of that is I felt like they at least threw the fans a bone in there by saying, hey, we're going to try to work on the atmosphere and the restrooms and things like that maybe we can control now. I think what that was really saying was, between the lines, we had no management over the situation. We've kicked the can down the line too long. This is what we're telling you. And in the meantime, we're going to try to make this as tenable as we can, but you got to be patient because the real fixes are going to take a few years. That's what I think that said.
Patience we've got, right? Patience, we can wait it out. I mean, good Lord. I mean, we're a little bit used to that. We just need promises.
Well, here is the other issue. I think they're having a hard time. I think they're having a hard time making promises because the situation is so screwed up. I think it might be easier to build 2 new facilities than it is to fix what they have in terms of football and basketball. And I think with Memorial, people would not want a new gym. I wouldn't blame them.
Right. I don't want a new Memorial. Don't get me wrong. The magic hasn't really been there for a little while, but that can change. And there's just not much like our home, man. Even if it was more up to date and all this stuff, I would like some improvements. I don't want a new Memorial. That I would not be cool with.
Yeah. I don't feel sorry for Vanderbilt at all. I do feel a little sorry for Malcolm.
Well, now before Malcolm was hired, we were told, though not in as far as details goes, that financially some big things were coming, some big shakeups were coming, some attitudes change, some checks are going to be written and all this other stuff. Where's that at?
Again, I think it goes back to when you're writing checks, you've got to write them for something. And I think the problems are so expensive, they've still got to figure out what the fixes are and what's the best way to do it. I'm not going to tell you 100% I'm right, but I've heard enough that's come out of there in bits and pieces that I think I'm at least close.
Okay, so What are we thinking about for the immediate as far as the football stadium goes? I know we're not getting a new stadium, at least not at this point, but for the immediate, what are we looking at?
I think that what they said something about the scoreboard and I think flipping one to the other end and putting a new one in. They'd said something about the bathrooms. I would presume concessions and just some things to make it more fun would be in there. I don't think that – my guess is 5 years from now that the current stadium's not there and they're playing in a new facility. That's my guess.
Wow. I would assume on campus.
Think so. I think that if you had to make me make a prediction, I would say 5 or 6 years from now that they are playing in a new stadium that is in that big lot across from the football practice field where they have the hospital parking.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Which makes sense, and I think what they would have – then the problem is you've just gotten rid of a ton of parking. So I would presume you'd want to get your parking back as quickly as possible, which to me would suggest that you demolish Vanderbilt Stadium, the existing one, as soon as you can to get started on that. I don't know if the bridge piece, and this is me speculating, but I suspect that the bridge piece in all this is the new soccer stadium because that's your landing spot for football for a couple of years if that's what you do.
Right. Which, I mean, I'm fine with if I know it's temporary. You know, I'm not worried about that at all. But for right now, you're talking, would you say switching the scoreboards? You know, so moving the big one that's in the end zone over to the other side and just elevated?
Whatever it said in that letter he sent, I didn't read that part in detail. Look, I know that that's not a big thing, fixing some bathrooms and stuff, but that's where I keep going back to. I think this current situation is so hard to fix that they probably don't want to put a lot of money into that. And I'm guessing like any scoreboard work or anything they do, I'm thinking that would be a piece that they could put in the new stadium if that's what they decide to do. I think that you have to, because you have so much money to spend on other places, I think you've got to really limit what you can do at the current stadium if the plan is to have a whole new stadium somewhere else. Because why would you throw money into that when you've got to raise a ton more to build the new thing? I think that's where they are. And I think when fans get upset, well, they hadn't announced this plan and they haven't announced that plan and they're not really going to do that much. To me, I thought that was a really good faith letter from Malcolm Turner. And me reading between the lines based on what I've heard, again, I'm not saying you 100% this is what's going to happen, but if you made me guess what is going to happen, I think that they're going to try to make some fixes to make that more tenable for the next few years and work on a long-term plan that's on campus in a different location, just because I think the current location, I just think you got too much to fix there for that to be really tenable is my sort of hypothesis on that. So I think they will try to get big return dollar for dollar on the fan experience the next couple of years without putting too much money into it so they can put it into the real fix.
Yeah, because when you told me that, my first thought was, wait a minute, you're going to switch that scoreboard to the other side and get it mounted up there only to move it again in a year or two after that. So, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Okay, well, hey, Chris, I mean, don't we have to consider this at least a decent foot forward?
Yeah, and the reason I said I feel sorry for Malcolm Turner is because there's a segment of the fan base that reads that and says same old Vandy. I don't think that's hating on Malcolm Turner. I understand why that segment of the fan base would say that because they have made so many promises or, it's just been crazy. It's just like, 1 minute we're going to do something, and the next minute they deny that it's even a problem. I mean, that's what you got under David the last few years. And so they've completely killed the fans' trust. They get killed on the local radio stations, which makes fans mad, but I understand where it's coming from. Now, some of it may just be creating a drumbeat for your own purposes for a few guys on the radio, but there's enough truth in it to make people mad. I think that Malcolm probably to a lot of people, that letter that he put out yesterday, on Tuesday, I guess it was, sounds like same old Vanderbilt. To me, from everything I'm hearing inside, it's not same old Vanderbilt. And that is just him making the best of a bad situation. Again, that is my opinion when I'm reading it, but I would be surprised if I'm far off on that, based on the things that I do know or have heard speculated from, and basically from things that came with inside that building.
All right. Well, these seem to be positive steps in the right direction. I kind of like some of the stuff that I'm hearing from you. Let's wrap it up with, tell me about, I've seen the film, but if you know anything else, and more than I do, and help me out, is it Jankovic or Otan Jankovic?
Yeah, that's the one we've been sitting on for about a month. I wasn't surprised to see that happen. He's kind of, from what I have gathered, one of those lower Power 5, maybe American Athletic Conference type players. I think UCF was maybe after him. I don't know that the kind of players that Jerry Stackhouse is getting. I mean, if you continue to get players like that, you're still probably playing on Wednesday night of the SEC tournament. That sounds like a criticism that's really not, because I think he's doing the best that he can at this point. I think you've got to have players, and I think he's, for the most part, getting the best kind of player he can get. He's just in a tough spot.
Well, yeah, and I fully expect them to recruit over some of these guys eventually.
Well, and if they're good at development, look, I mean, the guys that he's signing are no worse than the guys that Tennessee won the SEC title with out of high school. So you never know.
That's true, but that's generally the exception.
Well, that's very much the exception, but I think it's worth bringing up. And if they are good at development and developing toughness, you can coach players like that up if you get the right ones. I think that you don't win the league with guys like that or get to the NCAA tournament, but you do have to have a foundation outside of your Aaron Neesmiths and your stars of guys that can contribute as your 6th, 7th, 8th type of guy. So there's always a need for those kind of guys, unless you're like an elite level program like a Kentucky or one of those guys.
Yeah, his film was pretty decent. He certainly seemed to be able to move okay without the ball. It was pretty fluid. But I read somebody did an analysis of him last night. I think it was maybe Eric. Eric is the one that did it, and it just sounded like that decent player, but a little bit limited.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. So
okay. Well, but you're right. It's May the 29th. You're not going to add 4-star players without there being some kind of odd circumstance to the whole thing. So he's got to have bodies, and like I said, like you said, player development is one thing, and hopefully they're really good at that. But B, like I said, going forward, I'd fully expect them, just like Tim Corbin and anybody else will do, I'll recruit over you if I can.
Well, one thing, and I should have said this first. I won't share the whole thing, but we got a comp from him from somebody who would know. And this is all opinion and speculation, but I think it's safe to say they think he's potentially a lot better than where he is right now and where he's rated. I think they see him as a potentially huge contributor. So who knows how it'll turn out, but I do think that they think there's a lot of upside there. We'll see how it plays out.
Cool. And you never know. Sometimes you get pleasantly surprised. Let me ask you a question. Now it's kind of going back a little bit, but did you really expect Matt Freese to be as good as he was the day he got on campus?
No.
Matter of fact, he was, wouldn't you say he was one of the lesser thought of players in that class? And he came in, and not only was he not, he was one of our best players on that team immediately the day he got there.
I want to say Matt edged his way barely into the top 100 by the time his senior season was done, because he was, from what I remember, I think he had a really great senior year, and I think that people started to take note a little bit more.
Help me remember, because it's been a million years. I know I'm the one that brought him up. Was he in the same class as Billy Richmond?
Yeah, it was him and Billy Richmond and Brendan Plavick and Scott Hundley and Russ Lakey, I think. And Martin Schnedlitz was in there too. I think that was the class.
Man, I haven't thought about that name in a minute. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, and heck, I even went and watched a couple of his games play live. If you'd have told me, looking at that class, looking at everything there, I would have been the most excited about Billy Richmond, to be honest with you.
That was a train wreck, from what I've heard.
Man. And then some, my friend, but it all works out the way it's supposed to, I suppose. But yeah, that'd be great. Get some of these guys to come in and be surprised. The one thing about the basketball team, the one name that I don't hear, that, man, of course, I don't really know what we have. I know there's some potential there, but Ajike Obinna, what if he's developing? I mean, there was always the potential there from, especially defensively, if he can beef up a little bit. But I don't think anybody has any expectations about him going in, and I wonder if he may not be one of those pleasant surprises.
I'm to the point where I don't have expectations for anybody beyond Neesmith and Lee. Do you? I just think right now this is. I know people want more out of me in terms of what do you think. Honest to God, I just don't know. This is such a wild card. This is such a crapshoot. This is starting from such rock bottom. I just kind of sit back and watch the chips as they fall and say, okay, well, there's one chip. Let's see what happens next. But I just feel like it's going to be a while before I can assess their situation.
That's totally fair. I mean, like I said, look, I'm not making that prediction. I'm just wondering, if the red shirt helped him, come in stronger and a little bit older and a little bit more experience, and maybe he ends up being a decent piece in the paint that we weren't really thinking about.
I know the old staff loved him and said he was a 10-year NBA vet, but the old staff also made some pretty severe misjudgments on talent. So I don't know what that's worth.
They did. They got a couple right too, so we'll see, but definitely something to think about. What else you got? You got a mailbag, homie?
Yeah, let's get to the mailbag because basically about an hour and a half from now, I'm going to be headed to board a plane out of Colorado and heading home, which I'm looking forward to, although it's going to be a culture shock, man. Or not culture shock, weather shock. It's barely been 50 degrees here the last 2 days. It was 4 inches of snow a little bit north of here. And I think Nashville has just been burning alive from what I hear. So that'll be fun to get back to.
It's supposed to cool off. I think it's supposed to be in the low 80s tomorrow.
Yeah, when I get back, 90 is going to feel like 110 after what I've been in. So,
baby girl.
Okay,
let's do this.
Today's mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. You need an insurance agent who wants to know your unique needs and circumstances and will tailor an insurance plan to fit them. Josh is your guy. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He's my agent. Give him a shot. I think you'll be pleased. By the way, apologies to Vandy Doors 04 for omitting his $300 million question. Again, he asked that just in the interest of time and the stuff I have to do. Again, we're going to make that its own podcast one day. But let's start with Mr. Vandy, who says, what does Seabass think about the upgrades the administration is planning, and is it a good step in the right direction? I think we covered most of that just a few minutes ago, but you have any thoughts that you didn't share?
No, I don't know enough about them yet. I just read that surface stuff. So, plus I think we addressed that a little bit. I don't have any initial stuff.
Vandy Stud says, if Seabass were running Vanderbilt athletics, what's the first thing you'd do?
Oh man, if I was the first. Well, the first thing I would do is, I don't know what the Title IX restrictions are, but I would find a way to have a volleyball team. You know me. I would definitely love to have that. Man, me personally, it would be, I would throw a bunch of money into the upgrading of the football program in every way. in every conceivable way, from a facility standpoint, recruiting budget, just everything. Football is my favorite sport there, and I would do what it took. Look, like I said, I don't have visions of being LSU or Georgia and Florida and some of these other schools and size and attendance every day for every Saturday game. I get all that, but it's like I said, make it the best experience that we can possibly put on. Maximize this program to be as good as it can possibly be. I like some things about it, but there's some other stuff that clearly needs to be addressed, and I would make sure that happened.
I was not asked a question, but there's three things that kind of came to my mind. I'll share if you're interested.
I'm interested.
Well, the first thing, and this is probably silly, but first thing I'd do is I'd go have a talk with Tim Corbin, just make sure he's happy. I don't know any reason to think he's not, but just every now and then you get hit by a thunderbolt out of the blue, and that's not one you want to get hit with because he's the biggest asset on their campus right now. Second, I would say, to your thing about the football team, a player's lounge is something I think they'd really like. And that's something that you can throw you can throw money into, get a pretty big return for, that's not nearly as expensive as a stadium. The third thing, and maybe this would be the second thing, just beef up your ticketing and your customer service. Just because I don't think that there were many efforts there made to grow. The fan base scares me, man. I go to baseball games and I sit in the press box and I look down, and I don't mean any offense, but I just see a lot of people who are getting up there in years. And I think that's the case. I see it in front of me at basketball games. I'm sure it's the case at football. I just think that that's a fan base that is dangerously shrunk in a lot of ways in recent years. They need to make every effort to build that thing back up, to solidify the customers they have, reach out to the ones that used to have season tickets and maybe don't anymore. I would hire, if I were them, I would, this is kind of out of the box, I'd go to Disney or Marriott or somewhere like that where they've got like a reputation for stellar customer service, and just grab a couple of their really good people. Say, hey, we'll give you a nice raise to come to Nashville, come work for us, and let those people go.
It would be, I was sitting there thinking about some of the stuff you were saying. It'd be interesting to see if they had a campaign to cultivate that fan base. I'm talking about early on. It's where these kids are growing up, Vanderbilt pads, outside of people, whose family went there. And, I would love to see them attack that. I'm not in the market. I don't know how you do that, but man, when they're in junior high, man, get them out to the game. Bring a lot of those national. I don't know what the initials are for your national sports, your youth football teams and whatnot. I remember at the Liberty Bowl that a lot of the times the Tigers would invite all those small teams, and they'd all wear their jerseys, and all this stuff, and get them coming to the Vanderbilt games as a kid, as a group. And I'm talking about a bunch of them, hundreds of them out there, and getting out in these schools and staying out in front of them all the time, to where it's, like, I'll say this to you. I went to school at a very poor school in inner city Memphis. But one thing that the University of Memphis did well, especially with the basketball program, man, those kids loved it from the time they were little. They lived Memphis Tiger basketball, that university, from the time they were there. And I don't really see that with Vanderbilt. But I sure think that would be a great way to help build it going forward, because as you mentioned, you look out there and we love everybody, but if everybody out there is at least 50 years old for the most part, that's a problem for the future.
I'm in total agreement with you there. Let's see. Last question. View Matt 23 says, bottom of the ninth, bases loaded scenario. If Vanderbilt's up to bat, what current or former Vandy boy would you most want in the batter's box?
Give me the scenario once again.
Bases loaded, bottom of the ninth. You can pick any Vanderbilt baseball player you've ever seen. Who do you want in the batter's box in that spot?
Okay. I might surprise you, because I know you think I'm going to say something, the longs of Walker Buehler, or David Price, and those are right answers. But you know who I'm going to say? I'm going to go with the guy who, I mean, it seemed like every pitch was life or death. Every batter, he demanded the focus of his teammates, and you know, even if he didn't have his greatest stuff that day, you were going to get everything that he had. And if I needed one out to close the deal, I'm going with Carson Fulmer.
That is my answer too. I will never forget being in Omaha in 2015 and talking to him after the game. He won game one, and he pitched with like the flu. I want to say he had like 102-degree fever, and it was hot as can be out there too. That dude pitched that game and won it and went, I don't know if he went the distance, but he went a lot of the way. That kid, to me, that's why he's my answer with that too.
I don't think there is any other answer. It's Carson Fulmer. It just is. And so what was the other? It was for with the bat in my hand.
Correct.
Man, I mean, look, my first instinct would be to say Dansby, but I mean, man, I love J.J. Bleday, Chris. I mean, I love J.J. Bleday. Man, I'm probably wrong. I'm going with J.J.
My answer for that one, I didn't have to think about it either. It's Austin Martin to me, and I'll tell you why. With JJ, there's more probability that he's going to hit a home run or a double off the wall. So there's a bigger impact. But with Austin, there's a better chance that he's going to get on base, which if he gets on base, a run comes in. He's probably going to hit a laser somewhere if he gets to pitch to hit. He's not going to swing at a bad pitch. He just puts the ball in play so much and hits it so hard that if all you need is one hit, he's your best guy.
So if that scenario finds its way this year, somehow along the way, you're hoping that it's Austin, not JJ.
Yeah, and look, this is a beauty pageant. This is Ms. Universe and Who Do You Like? Because I also would love to have Philip Clark up there. I would love to have Ty Duvall up there. Heck, just about anybody in that lineup is capable of delivering a hit. But, I mean, Duvall, what I look at in that spot is who is a guy that if it doesn't go well, you say, well, he made you work for it. There's a little more chance JJ is going to strike out. I'm not saying he's going to chase a bad pitch, but Martin, Duvall, and Clark basically never swing at bad pitches and put the bat on the ball maybe a little bit more. I'd have to check that with Duvall. He may not, but Clark does. Well, look, we just had that situation in Hoover. Bases loaded, 2 outs. Who do you have in the box? And Clark delivered in that spot because he puts the bat on the ball and he's got good judgment. I'm not going to say that's a different answer to me than who's your best hitter, because if you need 3 runs, maybe it's Bleday with 2 outs. You know, say the guy coming up, although whoever they hit in 3-hole, which is Ethan Paul, has got a decent chance. But if you need to end it with one swing and you just need somebody to put the bat on the ball or get on base, then it's Austin.
Man, I'm not going to argue with that logic. I love me some Austin Martin, man. He's probably my favorite player on the team, to be real honest with you.
Anything else before I let you go? Because I need to wrap up and get the suitcase out the door and all that.
Yeah, fat boy, one more thing. I got to say, you know, it wasn't too long ago. I was like, you know, he's not really developed into what I thought he was going to be. But I got to say, I'm really impressed lately with Mike Minor.
Yeah, well, he's healthy again, too, I think.
You know, I mean, he just seems to be pitching not just as good as he ever has.
You know how when you see a guy take the mound and just feels like he's in charge? I was there for the first college pitch he ever threw in that college classic out at Houston in the Astros ballpark. I guess it was Enron then. And you could just tell from the minute that he took the field that he was in charge. And he was very confident in his stuff. And he's always been that kind of guy.
You remember that big matchup he had with when he was at Forest with McKenzie and Drew Hayes?
No, I can't say I was dialed in that deep on his career, but
I want to say, yeah, because he played at Forest here in Tennessee.
My mom's alma mater, by the way.
Is that right? Yeah, they played McKenzie. McKenzie had Drew Hayes going in that game, and I want to say McKenzie won that game 1-0. It was one of the teams, and they won that game 1-0. But man, you talk about a matchup, and Sonny's starting to pitch a little bit better.
Helps to have your pitching coach too, doesn't it?
It does, but I just wanted to mention Mike because it seems like every time he goes out these days, he's getting himself quality.
Yeah, I'm happy for him. I always liked Mike and his family. Hey, my friend, I've got to run. Tell folks where they can find you online, where they can find your show.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. You can find me online find me on Twitter at @CheapSeatsBass. You can find me online at WNWS.com. And if you listen on the radio on 101.5, it was called the Cheap Seats in year number 20.
He is Seabass. I'm Chris Lee. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Vandy Sports Podcast. We were going to try to do one more of these later in the week. I make no promises just because my schedule is pretty crazy. But anyway, if not, we will be back next week. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you again really soon.